Hello, I'm Joseph Moran. This is my Data Science 1001 case systems assignment due on the 30th. And today I'll be talking about NVIDIA stock and the GPU market and how that's been affected over the years from 2019 to 2022. So obviously, there's one question to ask first, and well, there's two questions really. The first one is, what is NVIDIA exactly? Well, NVIDIA is a American technology company founded in 1993 by Jensen Huang and two other electrical and computer engineers. And their goal was to produce GPUs instead of CPUs. And we'll get into what a GPU is in a sec, but that was kind of a revolutionary idea at the time for a company to focus on GPUs instead of CPUs. Um, Now, they had a slow start originally when they IPO'd in 1999. But they also had a big break there when their first widely adopted GPU, the GeForce 256, was used in Xbox video game consoles, so obviously that sold quite well. And their success continued as they made better and newer models of GPUs throughout the years, which got them the 2007 Forbes Company of the Year award. And also, the GPU market began to diversify as people realized how powerful GPUs could be in other fields like parallel computing and especially artificial intelligence, which is obviously a big thing now and was a little bit of a less big thing then, but still people realized it would be good. Um, and obviously, they continue to make GPUs, and that's still their primary focus. But now they try to expand it into different area industries, like parallel computing and whatever. And they hold a big market dominance in the GPU field. So, what is a GPU? That's a good question to ask next. It stands for Graphics Processing Unit, and it's an alternative to the CPU, which is the central processing unit, another way to process information and do calculations. It's not really an alternative, though. It usually works in conjunction with the CPU. And the big benefit to using a GPU instead of a CPU is that GPUs have I'm talking hundreds of different cores, which are like little task processing units. Now, and a CPU only has a few. Now, the CPU cores are individually much more powerful, but they can't split up simple tasks very well, whereas a GPU can because it has so many different like task machines, which are these cores, which allows them to run these simple tasks that are needed for things like graphics processing in parallel very quickly. And then researchers began to notice this speed, which led to GPUs being adopted in tons of fields like robotics, cryptocurrency, video editing, automotives, and machine learning. But the one problem is that they can be quite expensive to manufacture, which is something we'll see. So let's talk about NVIDIA's history with stock. 2019, I'd say, was a fairly normal year compared to all the other years we're going to talk about. Now they had a big problem in 2018. They lost a ton of market share, and so this was supposed to be kind of a recovery year. And they started off well by purchasing another company called Melamix Technologies, which was a semiconductor manufacturer, an Ethernet network adapter manufacturer, which led to some market positively reacting. They made a lot of new releases in GPU technology, which was good because it helped them compete with their main competitor, AMD. Although a decline in crypto hype did lead to a temporary decrease in stock in quarter two, but increase in gaming and streaming demand made up for some of these losses. Now, some of their new GPUs included the GeForce 16 series, which was this series of GPUs. And one example of this was the GTX 1660 Ti, which produced very high quality graphics for a lot cheaper than people would have expected at the time for the price, which made it sell very well. Another model, the RTX 2070 Super, increased performance metrics by almost 25% compared to previous models. And it sold a lot cheaper too, which again, very well expected. So overall, pretty simple, good year for an NVIDIA. Shares rose from about 35 to 60, so nothing bad to say about 2019. But obviously 2020, we all know what happens, COVID major influence on NVIDIA, both for better and for worse. People got stuck in their homes, which made the demand for pretty much all tech-related hardware stuff skyrocket, although slightly less for hardware than software. NVIDIA developed their new Ampere microarchitecture graphics model series, also known as the RTX 3000 series, which deployed to a lot of success, especially the RTX 3060 Ti and RTX 2080. However, they began to run into some supply chain issues, like many other companies did at the time due to the pandemic, shutting down international trade. And this limited supply of GPUs led to a lot of frustration, as they all were being bought up by scalpers and like crypto miners who just wanted as much as possible, which led to like actual consumers, like gamers, being frustrated that they were unable to buy GPUs. Big news in August when they announced they'd be purchasing ARM, which was one of their main competitors, which led to a big increase in stock. The metaverse also led to some boost in sales. People like the metaverse. It seemed kind of interesting at the idea. So, good year for NVIDIA. Shares doubled almost again, although some people were not happy with the fact that they couldn't actually get the GPUs. 2021, another great year for NVIDIA, I'd say. Story of supply chain and supply chain issues. The pandemic continued, which meant more demand for technology. New models on the Ampere, such as the RTX 3080 and RTX 3070, caused demand to increase, and NVIDIA's market dominance grew to over 80%. Now, unfortunately, there was some more crypto scalping, which led to a limited um, GPU GPU sale to more people. Only these crypto miners and scalpers were being able to use it. But NVIDIA was able to expand into new markets through the Canvas and Adobe editing tools, as well as other more less expected markets, such as the GeForce Now cloud-based streaming service, which obviously increased demand. However, the U.S.-China trade war began, which caused semiconductor imports to slow significantly and led to the MSRP, or the actual retail price for buying a GPU, being to actually buy a GPU, you had to pay like twice as much as what was expected, which became almost impossible to buy for any reasonable price to the average consumer. And some people even began just buying new computers and tearing out the GPU just for the GPU. But obviously, this was still good for NVIDIA stock. Maybe not good for the consumer, but good for their stock. And finally, in 2022, not a good year for NVIDIA, unlike the previous 3 years, until the very end. They had significant regulatory challenges, as they described in their effort to purchase ARM, which led to the deal falling through. Huge decrease in shares and a big embarrassment. They deployed a new GPU model called Lovelace instead of Ampere, which had some issues, especially because a very small number of consumers reported their RTX 4090 Lovelace model melting, their adapter melting, which was extremely uncommon. But when something like that happens, it's all that's talked about, which really hurt NVIDIA, even if it did work better, because the speed was still a lot better. Another embarrassment was their RTX 4080 prices being over $1,000 for a model that didn't really change much, and then NVIDIA even scrapped a version of it. GPUs still were hard to maintain, but this didn't seem to help NVIDIA as much as in previous years. However, despite all this, though, their market share still increased to over 88% in quarter four. And then, as we all know, into 2022, a little known thing called ChatGPT was released, which led to a lot of hype in AI. And as I discussed earlier, AI and GPUs go hand in hand. So the stock did go up a little bit at the end of the year. And we'll see that that definitely would have continued in 2023. But this is where I gotta stop now. So thank you for watching.